Okay, so let's start with a negative feeling. Let's say we're sad, or we're angry, or we're scared. These are the three basic kinds of negative feelings. Say we're feeling angry, sad, or scared. We can say with some confidence, when that's the case, we can say, something is wrong. Something is wrong. Now, that's provisional. It's a starting point, and we can come back and change our perspective later. But for now, we'll just flag it and say it's not controversial that if we're angry, sad, or scared, we can say something is wrong. Now, let's think about the nature of problems. Something is wrong. Now, where is the wrong thing? What is the wrong thing? Essentially, there is a separation, a distance between what we want and what we perceive. What we want and what we perceive creates a gap or a distance, and in that gap or distance, there is tension. There is tension, also known as stored energy. There is stored energy in the gap between our expectation, or what we want, our standards, and what we perceive, or what is, or the current reality. So there's something wrong, and now we have a clear map of the domain of possibilities, the problem space. Is what's wrong what I want, what I expect, my standards? Is that what's wrong? Or is it the way things are and what I perceive and reality? Is that what's wrong? Or is it both? But it can't be neither. It can either be that what I want and expect and the standards that I set could be that that's wrong, and therefore there is anger, sadness, or fear. Or that the way reality is, the structure of reality, right? So with the structures of my standards, maybe that's wrong, or maybe it's the structure of reality that's wrong, or maybe both. But it can't be neither, because if it was neither, then there would be no problem. There would be no gap. They would be aligned. They would be overlapping with each other in such a way as to collapse conflict or tension. There would be no tension or conflict if the world I saw, the world I perceived, the world that arises in consciousness outside of myself, or inside in the case of like a stomach ache or a heart attack or a stroke, if that lined up, if my experience of the world lined up with my vision of the world, then there would be no problem. There would be no anger, sadness, or fear provoked. So to zoom out from this whole picture for a moment, what we're talking about, what we're driving at, is what I call the NICEST, the New Integration Center for Emotional Science and Technology. So we're going back to first principles about the structure and mechanics of discontent. Anger, sadness, and fear are the three basic forms of discontent, and we're looking closely at the anatomy of discontent, which, as we said again, is the gap or distance or delta between our vision, how we think things should be, and how things are. Okay, so now to zoom back in, we're after power, we're after control, we're after influence. And on this map, we have two potential things that we can have power and influence over. Those are both our vision our standards, our desires, how we want the world to be, on one hand, and then how the world is, on the other hand. Think about the point of education. What is the point of education if not empowerment and to increase how much influence we have over how reality develops, matures, unfolds, and manifests? That is hard to debate as being the broad point of education. That with education, we gain agency, we gain know-how, we gain concepts and context and perspective. And the cash value of all that is the ability to affect change. So now again, we're looking at the two basic domains across which we can conceivably affect change, and those are our vision and how things are, our vision and our perception. And again, if there is no gap between our vision and perception, then there is no need for exerting energy, attention, influence, time, money to change anything, because we are content. Those are moments that we can be grateful for. And it's important to note that this is also the appeal of drugs and alcohol, that they actually often tend to collapse the conflict. They are a seductive and alluring path to instantaneous conflict resolution, aka instantaneously feeling better, but without any change in the world we perceive. Right? The drugs and alcohol, they actually change our vision, our standards. They tend to lower our standards, and so that we're chill, we're cool. We become cool with whatever is. So the issue is that actually the material world, the manifest reality, is actually often, in the case of addicts and alcoholics, degrading as a direct consequence of the drug or alcohol use, whereas we're lulled into a false sense of security because, at least for the time the effects of the drugs are working, we have a neutralization of that delta or gap or distance between perception and vision.